If you're a retro gamer, you know one company that used to be great, one company that was pretty much a seal of quality. When you saw a game developed by them or published by them, you knew it was going to be good, and that is Capcom, baby. Whether you're an 8-bit gamer, 16-bit gamer, 32-bit gamer, Capcom was firing on all cylinders during this time frame. You had great franchises like Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, Street Fighter. You had excellent licensed games. There was just so many great Capcom games during this time period, and the NES had its fair share of Capcom games as well. Actually, when I was researching this video, I was pretty astounded by how many games Capcom had released on the NES, so it was pretty interesting to me, and most of them were pretty high quality. So picking my 5 favorites, that's pretty tough. But over on the Patreon page, I have a reward tier where you can basically pick what sort of video you want me to make. And eventually I'll get to it, I swear. But Alan decided he wanted me to talk about my 5 best NES games from Capcom. And it was pretty challenging, honestly. I liked a lot of these games, there's a lot of cool games, but I did come up with one rule for this video. There can only be one Mega Man game, because there were 6 Mega Man games released on the NES, and really, you could pretty much do a top 5 of just the best Mega Man games. So I decided only one Mega Man game on this list. The other 4 games will of course not be Mega Man games. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about the best NES games from Capcom.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! The first game I want to talk about is an NES classic. Many people have it in their top 10 NES games, and rightfully so. It is a licensed game from Capcom, and that is DuckTales. DuckTales was a very popular cartoon in the late 80s and early 90s, and it got a video game from Capcom, and the video game is super good. You play as Scrooge McDuck, you have your little cane that you can use as a pogo stick, or you can hit blocks with it, you know, sort of like a golf swing sort of mechanic. It's just a very well done game. The visuals are great, the music is great, it has the DuckTales theme song in the intro, and it's just a fantastic game. It doesn't take very long to get through if you know what you're doing, but it's definitely a game worth playing. It definitely holds up still in 2017. And even if you don't own an NES, there are still other ways to play this game. A remastered version came out for various systems. I actually own it on the Wii U, and it just has better visuals, it has some unlockable stuff, and it's still a great way to play the original DuckTales. But DuckTales, a fantastic game top to bottom, one of my favorite NES games, and definitely one of the best games published and developed by Capcom for the NES. The next game I want to talk about is arguably my favorite game on this list, and it is a game that, unfortunately, out of all of these games, I do not own it on a cartridge because, well, it's expensive, and I'm very cheap, and I don't want to spend a lot of money on a cartridge, but that is Mighty Final Fight. Now, Mighty Final Fight came out on the tail end of the NES. It came out around 1993, but it really shows because Mighty Final Fight has some of the best visuals in an NES game, in my opinion, especially in the brawler segment of games. You know, you saw games like Double Dragon and whatnot, but Mighty Final Fight almost could pass for like a Super Nintendo game. It sort of has a chibi art style as opposed to the Final Fight series, which was available in arcades, but aside from that, it looks great. The character models look really great. There's a ton of different moves. Everything is very detailed. The backgrounds are very imaginative as well. It's just a very, very solid game. But like I said, it is also a very expensive game. It was a late release on the NES. There wasn't that many copies released because it released in 1993 when the Super Nintendo was well hitting its stride. So Mighty Final Fight, unfortunately, is a tough one to come across. But luckily, there are other ways to play this game. You could play it on the 3DS via the eShop, and I actually own it on the 3DS eShop as well. And it's just a great game, top to bottom, just a really solid game, a fun game. There's different characters to choose from. Each character has its own unique moves. Just a really fun game. It's super expensive, but if you own a 3DS, I highly recommend picking it up on the eShop, or of course there's other ways to play NES games. It's 2017, folks, but Mighty Final Fight, an excellent game, and definitely probably my favorite game from Capcom on the NES. If you've never played it, but you enjoy side-scrolling beat-em-ups, you really owe it to yourself to see one of the finest NES side-scrolling beat-em-ups ever. The next game I want to talk about is the second licensed game on this list. Now, this game is sort of akin to Mega Man, and some people actually say it's harder than a lot of Mega Man games. It was also a Disney licensed game based off a cartoon from the early 90s, and that is Darkwing Duck. When there's trouble, you call DW. Darkwing Duck! Let's get dangerous. I don't know what it is about Darkwing Duck. it's just a very highly polished game. If you've ever watched the cartoon, you'll feel right at home with this game. The platforming mechanics, they can be pretty tricky, but it's very solid. The shooting mechanics are very well done as well. The animations look great, the environments look great, but like I said, this is a very, very challenging game, but it's definitely one that you should check out, especially if you're a fan of these old school Disney cartoons. Now, there was a Disney cartoon collection, I don't really recall the name of it, I think it was a Saturday morning cartoon collection that released on the PS4 and the Xbox One, and I believe this game was included in that. So if you want to play this game, but you don't want to spend, you know, the $40 to $50 that it costs for an NES cart, this is a great way to play it. If you're a fan of Mega Man games, Darkwing Duck, in my opinion, is a no-brainer. One of the finest games created by Capcom on the NES, and plus the cartoon was just freaking awesome, man. If you don't like the Darkwing Duck cartoon, I really have to question what you're doing with your life, because it's Darkwing Duck. It's a subsidiary of DuckTales, ducks. Who doesn't like ducks? Everyone likes ducks. The next game I want to talk about is a game that, honestly, I don't think many people would have on their top 5 list, because like I said, there's so many awesome games done by Capcom for the NES. But for me, this is a game that's worthy of a spot. Yes, it is a side-scrolling sort of hack and slash game. Yes, it's not that memorable, but it's a game that I feel is sort of underrated and not enough people talk about, and that is Trojan. No, not the condom, the video game. Get your mind out of the gutter. But no, seriously, Trojan is like a super legit game, and it really just resonates with me because I really like the art style in the game. There's really interesting detailed backgrounds that take place in this sort of post-apocalyptic world, and you're just going around with this sword just like hacking and slashing people. The characters all are very big. The sprites themselves are very big. They're very colorful. Everything looks really well. The gameplay is super tight. It's not a game that's very memorable. It's actually a very cheap game on the NES, and it's definitely one you should check out though. You know, like I said, I don't think a lot of people will have Trojan on their list, but for me, Trojan is just a fantastic game. It's not very long to play through, but it's very fun, and I really enjoy the art style. I really enjoy the animations. The gameplay is top notch. So if you've never checked out Trojan, you probably own it if you're an NES collector, because like I said, it's a very common game and a very cheap game, but definitely one you should check out. Now, obviously, the last game on this list is going to be a Mega Man game, but before we talk about which Mega Man game I decided to choose, I want to highlight 2 games that did not make the list, but they probably could have and they probably should have. The first game is 1943. I love shmups, and this is a very solid shmup on the NES, arguably one of the best shmups on the NES. It's obviously a war-style game that takes place in the year 1943, hence the name, so there's sort of old-school aircraft and whatnot in it, but it's very well done. It's a very fun game and definitely a game worth checking out. The other game is an arcade port, which is Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke was a very awesome game, and this also is sort of a shooting game. It has a scrolling screen that you can't really stop it or whatever. You know, it's not like a 2D side scroller. It's a top-down view, and the screen constantly scrolls. But once again, another top-notch game, a really solid game. And if you've never checked out Gunsmoke, it's not super expensive on the NES, and definitely another great Capcom game. But it's time to talk about Mega Man. So this was pretty tough. You know, there's 6 Mega Man games on the list, and honestly, Mega Man is a series I like, but I don't love it. And so I'm not, you know, not gonna sit here and say I've played and beaten all 6 of them. I've definitely played all of them, but I haven't beaten all 6 of them. So, which one did I decide to choose? I'm gonna have to be cliche and say Mega Man 2. Now, Mega Man 2 pretty much just took the game formula from Mega Man 1 and really just ramped it up to 10. You know, it sort of became the standard for the Mega Man series. You had a lot of interesting bosses like Woodman and Crash Man, and just the game is just top notch in my opinion. They added in E-tanks so that you could get additional health throughout the levels, and just a finely crafted game. Many consider it to be the best Mega Man game on the NES, and I am definitely one of them. It was a great selling game as well. I believe it sold like over 1.5 million copies, which was pretty crazy. Had an absolutely hideous box art. I don't know who signed off on this and was like, hey, this is a good looking box art. This is gonna sell games. It looks just like the character in the game. It looks nothing like Mega Man. It looks nothing like him. But honestly, Mega Man 2 is just a fantastic game. It's definitely the best in the NES series, in my opinion, and it is my favorite Mega Man game, and definitely one of the 5 best Capcom games that were released on the NES. If you, for some reason, never played Mega Man 2, there's a bunch bunch of different ways to play it. There's the Legacy Collection where you can play it on. That came out on a myriad of systems. Definitely play Mega Man 2 though. If you have to pick one NES Mega Man game, Mega Man 2 gets my nod of approval. And there you have it, folks. Those are my 5 best NES games from Capcom. And I think I did a good job. I think I covered the heavy hitters, maybe talked about some games that don't get enough recognition, and I talked about Mighty Final Fight, which is one of my favorite NES games and definitely the best NES Capcom game in my opinion. But like I said, this is just my opinion, so I'm sure you guys have different opinions and you probably have a different list. So let me know in the comments section down below. I want to know your top 5 Capcom games, and don't pick all Mega Mans unless you really want to, then that's fine too. But let me know in the comments what your top 5 Capcom games on the NES were, because there's a lot to choose from. I know some people, I actually hit up Twitter before I did this video, and some people were saying games like Willow and whatnot, and Willow is actually a pretty cool game that probably could have been included in this as well. But like I said, hit me up with your top 5 in the comment section down below. Thank you for checking out this video. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave me your list in the comments down below. Check out all the stuff in the description box. We got Patreon, which is super cool, and that's what this video came to you from. Thank you to Alan on my Patreon for choosing this video. We got t-shirts, we got social media links, all sorts of stuff. Keep up to date with RGT85, and I will catch you guys next time. Later.
RGT 85. RGT 85. RGT 85.